Hello everyone, welcome to Ceci Truman Live. This show will be starting in just a few moments, so stay tuned. And if you're seeing this on social media, please like, share, and follow. For more information, go to trumanforcongress.com. This show is brought to you by Ceci Truman. Here's Ceci.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Ceci Truman Live show. We are here to discuss a very important topic, the life of the unborn. We are welcoming Christina Bennett. She is a news correspondent with Live Action. And what Live Action is a human rights organization. They are dedicated to changing hearts and minds regarding the unborn child. And, we need to make this an unthinkable and illegal act in America. So please welcome Christina Bennett to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Christina, for being here with us. And, we need to get the information out far and wide. And I believe that if we can start saving the lives of our unborn, that God will look at America once again and give us favor. And I always like to quote 2 Chronicles 7:14, that if my people, speaking to the church, speaking to those that are in Christ, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, will seek my face, will turn from their wicked ways, then God says, I will hear from heaven. I will answer your prayers and I will heal your land. And we need healing of our land because we are spinning out of control, and we see that, our country is falling apart, and that, there is war is being imposed by other nations upon America. And so if we need to get this right, if we need to value life, and if we expect for God to protect our nation.
I absolutely agree 100%.
So, I wanted to discuss a few things, and we're going to show a really quick video clip as to what Live Action is, what you do, Christina, in the organization. So let's go ahead and roll that.
I want my baby. And he yelled at her, saying, "Don't leave this room." She felt his anger came from fear of losing her business and those that could possibly follow. She met with a counselor at the hospital who assured her she was making the right decision, but didn't offer counsel on available alternatives.
This is Olivia. Though she has yet to greet the outside world, she has already completed an amazing journey. This is the moment that life begins. A new human being has come into existence. At fertilization, her gender, ethnicity, hair color, eye color, and countless traits are already determined. She begins to implant in the uterus about 1 week after fertilization. Her cells organize into what we call an embryo. At 3 weeks and 1 day, just 22 days after fertilization, Olivia's heartbeat can be detected. The buds of her arms and legs appear by 4 weeks. She begins to move between 5 and 6 weeks with both spontaneous and reflexive movements. At 6 weeks from fertilization, her brain activity can be recorded and bone formation begins. She can bring her hands together at 7.5 weeks, and separate fingers and toes emerge. She can also begin to hiccup. At the beginning of the 9th week, Olivia will have grown from a single cell into nearly 1 billion cells, and she is now called a fetus. She will suck her thumb and swallow, grasp an object, touch her face, sigh and stretch. At 11 weeks, she is playing in the womb, moving her body and exploring her environment. Her taste bud cells have matured by week 12 but are still scattered throughout her mouth. Her mother will first sense Olivia's movements between 14 and 18 weeks, an event called quickening. Beginning at 18 weeks, ultrasounds show speaking movements in her voice box. Around 20 weeks, with a lot of help, babies have survived outside the womb. At 27 weeks, her eyes are responding to light. She can recognize her parents' voices and will even recognize lullabies and stories. Olivia has gone on an amazing journey during these last 9 months. She will soon signal to her mother that it is time for delivery and greet the outside world.
Okay, so that kind of gives a visual as to what live action does. And we implore people to get involved, to plug in, to follow you and everything that you guys are doing, because you guys are making a lot of waves right now. And I wanted to start off talking about the founder of Planned Parenthood, who she was. Her name was Margaret Sanger. She is the founder. Go ahead and give us the info that you have on her.
Sure. So Margaret Sanger, depending on who you talk to, you'll hear different stories. Unfortunately, many people believe that she is the birth control champion of America. They look at her as a feminist, a women's right advocate, and the founder of Planned Parenthood. But for those of us who know the truth about Margaret Sanger, it's a lot darker than the public knows. She believed in eugenics. She believed in population control. And she had a philosophy that certain people groups, that it would benefit society, mainly Caucasian people, white people, it would benefit society if they had more children. But then other people, primarily Black people, people of color, people that had disabilities, that they needed to have a decrease in their populations. And so before she founded Planned Parenthood, she had something called the American Birth Control League. And she had different publications that she wrote in. One of them was called The Woman Rebel, No Gods and No Masters was the title of this. And she really pushed, at the time it was birth control, because she understood that in the 1930s, 1940s, that Americans were not ready to even think about abortion. So she pushed birth control through various ways. One of the things that she did was called a Negro Project, where she hired Black ministers to go into tent revivals and to talk about birth control. But her whole mindset was really to decrease the populations of people that she thought were feeble-minded, ignorant, that shouldn't be reproducing after their own kind. She really saw people of color as a stain on society. She talked about people with disabilities, people of color, like human weeds. And it was really just a disgusting, horrific, racist mindset that she held, but she was doing it under the guise of wanting to help people. So when she was to meetings. She spoke before the KKK. And when she spoke before the KKK, she was invited multiple times after that to go to other groups. But she presented herself as being sort of an angel, wanting to be a savior to people, wanting to help people. But really, in reality, she was a devil. She was someone that was bringing about population control, eugenics, and now the fruit of that is millions and millions of children that have died because of her philosophy and because of the industry that she built.
Right. And, if you look at, if you look throughout history and we look at tyrannical leaders, it's a satanic ideology. It's a satanic tactic to want to destroy life. And,
Right.
In the Bible, it says that Satan comes as the angel of light. So, and that's what we would call like a sociopath, someone who's very polite, someone who's very nice. But inside, they are monsters. And this is the charm they use to reel people in, to deceive people. And
Right.
and so that's how we can describe Margaret Sanger. She was not who she purported to be. She was a devil in disguise. And
Right.
what she has done is, killed millions and millions, not just in America, but, this organization, Planned Parenthood, has stretched countries, and, they use our tax dollars
Right.
to, forward their movement. And this should not be the case. And, I want to talk about the facts of life. And we did show in the clips of baby Olivia and the formation of life. And, I always say that God is the author of all life, from the womb to the tomb. He is the author. And we are not gods that we should make the decision to end life at any time. And, not only that, but the barbaric and disgusting way that they kill the most innocent, the most vulnerable of our society, who don't have a voice. They should be cared for, nurtured, and protected. And what are we doing? We're doing the complete opposite. Can you talk about the facts, the evidence of life, that, we have the most technology ever in human history, and yet we still want to fall back on science from 100 years ago, or even before that, to say that, there is no life, but that's not true.
Oh, you're absolutely. We as a generation have access to 3D and 4D ultrasounds. We know that babies can feel pain in the womb after 20 weeks. That's debated by people, but unfortunately, they're not willing to always look at the science. We know that 18 days that there's a heartbeat. And so when these states are passing, heartbeat legislation, and people say, oh, it's too early and it's just a clump of tissues, just a lump of cells. No, a heartbeat is there. And a heartbeat is a sign of life, that a baby is
Right.
growing and living as a human, as an individual. We know that that baby has DNA from the mother and from the father, and they can do miraculous things in the womb. They can suck their thumb, they can move around, they can hear their parents' voice. And it's not just this tissue that can be discarded and can be removed. What's tragic is that the pro-abortion movement, they use language that really dehumanizes the baby in the womb because they don't want to acknowledge that it's a human child. So they'll say that it is a product of conception. I've even heard people say that it's a parasite because it, depends on the mother for its nutrients. And of course, we hear the word fetus, which is just, it's a technical word, but they use it in a way to try to strip humanity from the baby. If you think about it, whenever a woman announces that she's pregnant, if it's your friend or family member, you never say, oh my gosh, you're having a fetus. You only say you're having a baby. But they use these technical terms in in regular conversations because they want to use words that are more technical and scientific, or even cold, because they don't want to use baby or child. They don't want to acknowledge the reality of what is happening in the womb. And so we have all of this really at our fingertips. So in the 1980s, I was born in 1981. At that time, not every woman had access to even, the ultrasound technology that we have today. And of course, prior to that, Wade was legalized in 1973. So many women did not. And so now to be able to go really on your phone and to look up baby Olivia and to be able to see this baby growing in the womb, to be able to go and get a 3D, 4D ultrasound, we have no excuse. All of our excuses are taken away. We know clearly this is a baby. This is a baby that's moving, that's growing, the brain waves, they're developing, they hiccup, they're moving around and they can feel pain after 20 weeks. And so we really have no excuse to use the violence of abortion to poison them, to snuff out their life in such a gruesome way.
I 100% agree. And it grieves my heart. It really grieves my heart that our hearts, I'm not saying you and I'm just saying there are, proponents in America that our hearts have been seared to turn off that emotion and that God-given, as a mother, we have the natural ability to be nurturers, and to turn that off, something's direly wrong. And
yes,
what do you say regarding the evidence of, you mentioned the heartbeat law, and I like to always say, I'm running for Congress, and I like to always, when I have questions come up regarding, are you pro-life? I say, yes, I'm pro-life. Really, we should say, we are pro-choice because, the Bible says choose life. And so the opposite of choosing life is pro-death. So really, they should call themselves pro-death. And, I like how they try to reword things, that they are, an organization for reproduction, when really they are doing the actual opposite of reproduction. So that's also a fallacy. But, we do have in America a heartbeat law. And the heartbeat law says when at the end of life, when there is no longer a heartbeat, they deem that person deceased. So why do we have that logic and rationale at the end of life, but not have it at the beginning of life? When there is a heartbeat, why don't we deem that life?
Right. Well, we should. And I think it's just what you said, it's deception. And the language that we've used, reproductive rights, reproductive justice, reproduction has already happened. When you're talking about a baby that's in the womb, the reproduction has already happened. The baby is there growing. And now you're wanting to dismember it. Now you're wanting to destroy it. But we believe these lies. And I understand. I grew up in Connecticut, where I'm at now. It's a very pro-abortion state. I grew up going to public school, and I grew up in a home where abortion was never talked about. So I know what it's like to just be ignorant, because that's basically what it is. And then you don't want to look at the evidence before you. Yes. So you turn your eyes away and you don't want to look at it. And unfortunately, even at the end of life, we're also dealing with this in Connecticut and many other states. They're trying to pass assisted suicide bills. So they're really devaluing life when you're young and you're the most vulnerable as an unborn child. And then when you're elderly and you're vulnerable. In both of these areas, we're seeing Americans and those across the globe who are saying, because you're young, because you're old, you don't have value. And therefore your life can be discarded. It can be thrown away. And, you don't contribute to society. You are not worthy of us protecting you. And that's really sad, because the law is meant to protect us. We should have the right to life, to liberty, to the pursuit of happiness. And the role of government is to care and to protect its citizens. But yet there's entire people group that we are ignoring because we think that their lives don't matter. And so that's why it's so important for elected officials and those like yourself who are running for office to be boldly pro-life and to not be ashamed, because trust me, they're not ashamed on the other side. They are not ashamed. They are very clear when they are endorsed by Planned Parenthood, when they're endorsed by these national abortion rights organizations. They wear it like a badge of honor, and it's embarrassing. It's pathetic that they would do that, but they do it. But yet when we're pro-life, sometimes people not you, but sometimes other politicians are a little bit intimidated to come out and say that. And that's because they've been told, oh, that means that you hate women, or no, that's a lie. You know, many of us are women, and we need to be bold and say that this is wrong. And so I applaud you for doing that.
Thank you. And I tell people that all the time. Do not be ashamed to be called a conservative. That
Right.
is our badge of honor. And you know
Right.
what? Ultimately, we answer to God. One day we all meet our creator face to face alone. You're not going to have your friends behind you. You're not going to have Planned Parenthood behind you. You're going to be alone with the creator, and he's going to ask, what did you do with the talent and the time I gave you? And, you know, I don't want to be that person. I feel for those people who have made the wrong decisions and who have sided on the wrong side of history. And so, you know, we should always be on the side of God. Is
Right.
the author of life. The devil is the author of death and destruction. And, you know, he's out to destroy the most beautiful creation that God has created. And so, you know, you mentioned that Margaret Sanger, her movement began in the 1930s. And what came to my mind is, meanwhile, in the 30s, we have in Germany, the Third Reich rising, the Nazi Germans, and Hitler also adhered to the same ideology, but in Germany. And
Right.
that's why he did what he did. He believed in eugenics, that if, you know, if society deems you not valuable, well, we need
Right.
to, you know, destroy that life, whether it's, you know, at the beginning of life, in the womb, or you have a disability, or, you know, that you were not the right race. And
Right.
so
Right.
racism flowed in Germany, racism flowed in America. And the thing is the, you know, Black community, the Latino community, we've all been duped. You know, we have been duped. The minute we turn our back away from biblical principles, biblical values, and God, you know, if we don't believe strongly in that, we're going to fall for anything. We're going to fall
It's
for
true.
other ideologies and be deceived by, you know, culture. And, you know, culture is ever so changing. God stays the same yesterday, today, forever. And he is the creator of all things. We need to surrender, not only us individually, but collectively, and go back to those biblical principles, because we see what is happening in our culture now, that we have taken God out of everything,
Right.
and we have not valued life. And now we see, what do we see, you know, happening, especially in California, and, you know, a lot of these liberal states, that, you know, they're lowering, you know, crime, um, felony crimes to misdemeanors. We've got people out in the streets rioting, creating
Wow.
havoc, burning cars down, burning buildings down, you know, assaulting other people, smash and grab. You know, we've got complete chaos going on in our major Democratic, liberal, far left, you know, cities, because of policy. So legislation and policy affects all of us. And, you know, people think, well, it doesn't affect me, so I can just ignore politics. Well, guess what? It's going to come knocking at your door one day,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's no escaping. Just like the people in Germany, they thought that the pastors, the churches, the people thought, well, you know, we're just going to mind our own business. And, you know, this guy, Hitler, he's going to do what he's going to do. Well, we'll just keep our mouth closed. And, you know, that is never the answer, to put your head in the sand. You know, we
Right.
as believers, we need to be leading the charge. We need to stand for righteousness, and not cower back.
Oh, you're absolutely right. We can't just ignore it as if it's not going on, because there's been over 60 million babies that have died since 1973, over 20 million in the African American community. And as you said, you know, it impacts everything. If you don't value life in the womb, then you're teaching children not to value life outside of the womb. And I
Right.
really believe, even in a spiritual sense, that the things that we see in all different, you know, arenas, the dishonoring of parents, the
Mhm.
dishonoring of the elderly, the increase in gun violence. Yes, there's many factors, but I also believe that one of the core issues is just a devaluing of life. I've had people say to me, I was, I should have been aborted. Like I've had people say to me, my mom was thinking of aborting me and she probably should have aborted me. And that is just a very sad mindset. It's almost as if they're saying that they wish that they weren't born because it would have been better that way. And that's just awful. And as you said, that comes from a false mindset that doesn't value life, but that's part of our culture where we've cultivated that because we've taught people, your life is, if it's inconvenient, then it doesn't have to be here. Another issue too that people don't connect to abortion is even just, domestic violence and sex trafficking
Yes.
and some of these other issues. Like, how do we think that sex traffickers are keeping girls in business? How are they keeping girls in business? Well, they're going to get abortions and then they're bringing them back so that they can service, these men in this, these horrible, horrific ways. And abuse is covered up, through abortion.
Yeah.
And so all of these different alliances with the abortion industry that are money making, alliances. And as you said, our government, our taxpayer dollars is funding this stuff. It's funding it overseas as well, as you mentioned. And that's really frightening because that does bring about, I believe, judgment on our nation for us spreading this wickedness in our own culture to our own children in the school systems and then throughout the nations of the earth.
Right. Because if the foundation at the core of our nation, if we cannot value the most innocent, the unborn, it filters out into other areas, into other arenas, like you mentioned,
Right.
sex trafficking. I mean, I know that in politics, I hear of cries for reparations regarding the Civil War era. The Black community wants to be compensated for their great grandparents. That's like third down the line, for slavery. But nobody talks about modern day slavery happening right under our nose. And I'm talking about all races, white, Latinos, Black, Asians. We've got every culture, European, we've got around the world, and nobody wants to talk about the crimes happening right now. And
I think it's, yes, I think it's easier to look back at something horrific that happened and to recognize it than it is to look at what's happening right now. So, like you mentioned, sex trafficking and women that are being enslaved in our neighborhoods, right, like next to the nail salons, next to the hair salons, and even little massage parlors and places that, in late hours, things are happening that are, despicable. And it's happening in our communities. And it's easy to look the other way because, in school, we're taught about this particular type of evil and we recognize that that's wrong. But what's before us, we're blind to it. And that's very sad.
Exactly. Christina, you touched on your mom's story. I wanted you to share a little bit more about your testimony. You're here because of a miracle. And, go ahead and share your story, your mom's story and your story.
Yes, I would love to. My mother scheduled to abort me 1981. It was Mount Sinai Hospital, Hartford, Connecticut. And she was really being coerced at the time. My dad had two kids from two different women, and he didn't want a third child from a third woman. And she was going to church. She was attempting to have a relationship with God, but she was also sinning and having sex outside of marriage, which she understood. So she did go to her mentor at church and tried to tell her, I'm pregnant, and hoping for some empathy, hoping for some help. But her mentor looked at her and said, you know what, if you come back to this church, I'm going to be the first person to put my foot in the door and not let you in. So she really rejected her, basically told her, you're not welcome here anymore. It devastated my mom, and it just pushed her, more towards having an abortion. So she went by herself to the hospital, and she put a white robe on. They took her money, and she met with a counselor, but no counsel was given. The woman didn't ask her about options. Very different than resource center that's going to offer you actual counsel and help. She said to her, well, this seems like the best decision for you to make. And she told her, just go wait in the waiting room. The doctor's going to call your name. And in that moment, God broke in a miraculous way. He sent an elderly African-American janitor, and the janitor saw her crying in the hallway, and she walked up to her, looked her in the eyes, and said, do you want to have this baby? And my mom said yes. Even though she was in the white robe, even though she had paid for the abortion, she said yes. And this janitor said, God will give you the strength. And that's what it took. It took this woman saying to her, who my mom believes was an angel. She said her eyes were like pools of water. She said she put her head back down. She put her head up and she was gone. But it took those words, God will give you the strength. So she walked into the waiting room, and the abortionist said, come into my office. And instead of leaving, she just went to his office for a minute, and she saw blood on the floor, that he hadn't cleaned up the blood on the floor from the last abortion. And so she was disgusted, and she told him, I'm leaving. I changed my mind. And he said, no. The first words out of his mouth was, you've already paid for this. And that shows you the mindset of the abortion industry. She's telling him, I've changed my mind. And he said, you've already paid for this. Then again, she said, no. And he said, you're just nervous. He was trying to manipulate her. You're just nervous. And she said, no. Again, I changed my mind. And then he yelled at her. He said, don't leave this room. And she ran out. She got her clothes. She changed. And she called my dad on the payphone. And to my dad's credit, they ended up getting married, but they had a tumultuous relationship. They divorced after a year and a half. But I grew up not knowing any of this. And there was never a plan to tell me. My mother never would have ever told me. She would have taken it to the grave. But when I was in college, I was visiting a church, and someone approached me and said, Christina, God wants you to know something remarkable happened around the time of your birth. And that was the prophetic word that was given to me. Something remarkable happened around the time of my birth. So me never hearing a message on abortion, never hearing abortion talked about in my home, only hearing it from a secular public school perspective, I went to my mom at 20 something years old and I said, did anything remarkable happen around the time of my birth? And she said to me, I met an angel before you were born, but I don't want to talk to you about it. So I actually let it go for a couple months. I went on a missions trip with Campus Crusade in college. And then at the end of that summer, I came back and I said, Mom, please, what does that even mean? And she said, I can't tell you, you would hate me. And I said, I would never hate you. And then she told me, I scheduled to abort you. I ran out. And she told me the whole story. And it was just, it changed my whole life. I'm 42 years old now. I was in my 20s then. I've been pro-life basically ever since. This is the main work that I've done. I took my college degree, and I've used it, but not in the way that I originally intended. I never thought I would use it as a pro-life advocate. So God had an interesting plan for me, but my mom would have taken it to the grave. But the Lord not only sent a stranger to rescue my life, but then he sent somebody else to, challenge me to get my mom to tell me the story in the first place. So it's been a miraculous journey.
And, it breaks my heart because there is a lot of shame involved with, women who have thought about it, or women who have had an abortion. And I want to speak to any woman out there or girl who's listening to us tell our stories, that there is grace. God can forgive. God's love covers a multitude of sin, and his grace is sufficient. But our part is we have to acknowledge that it's wrong. It's sin. Sin separates us from a holy God. What we are to do is to acknowledge that it's wrong, and just ask the simple question, Lord, please forgive me. Can you please forgive me? And you know what? He is faithful to forgive and wash our soul clean. And I have a similar story that your mom had with you. And that, for a long time, I didn't talk about it, but I did ask for permission from my son to tell, and I tell him it's our story. That his life, my oldest is now 30. And I told, I asked, can I tell our story? And he said yes. And, my situation was similar. I was in college going to an extension of Berkeley, very liberal. I was not into politics at the time. I was just going to this college because it was recommended. And
Right.
I had some pretty crazy professors, let me tell you. You know, I had dated in high school before I moved to the Bay Area. I dated in high school 4 years, had a boyfriend, and we broke up. We broke up for about 3.5 years. And I went back one spring break to go visit friends in San Diego. And I thought, oh, I'll go see my ex-boyfriend. It's been so long, it should be fine. Well, we saw each other. We still had feelings for each other. It had not gone away. And, a month later, I'm back home in the Bay Area. And lo and behold, I'm pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant. I just knew I was very sick,
Right.
having that morning sickness that I've never encountered that before. Well, my friends told me at work, said, how are you going to take care of this baby? And I said, well, yeah, they're kind of right. Like, I didn't know. And it was very scary time because, this is, you're not married. Plus I was embracing the feminist ideology, of
Right.
being independent. We don't need men, and but that's what we were being taught in college. And my friends all around me were feminists and liberals. And I decided, you know what, she's right, they're right, I'm going to go to Planned Parenthood. So I did. I scheduled to go. I sat in the waiting room, and literally, and I was filling out the form, and the room starts spinning on me.
Wow.
And I thought I was absolutely going to pass out. I got very ill, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is part of that morning sickness, but I just couldn't even fill out the form. I was so besides myself. So I left. I bolted out of there. As soon as I left the building, I was fine again. And I thought, well, I'll just have to reschedule. I'll come back another time. So I did that. I rescheduled. Same thing happened. And I knew,
Wow.
okay, well, this is not happening. So I left again. And I literally bolted out of the room. The girl
Wow.
she had no idea what was wrong with me. And I just said, I can't. I put the clipboard down and I ran out. And now I know that was God. That was the power
Yes.
of God. So, I'm finally one day after that driving to work. I'm on the 24 freeway heading to Berkeley. And I know precisely the spot I was at when the God got a hold of me. And I just felt like he crashed down on me. I wept. I said immediately, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for even thinking I would do this. And when I said that, I felt instantly in love with this baby that was inside of my womb.
Wow.
And the only thing I knew what to pray was, I will trust you, God. So this is how. And then, now my ex-boyfriend is now my husband of 30 years. And we've had 2 more children. We've had a total of 3 sons. And let me tell you, my oldest child, had I not made the decision to keep him, I believe my life, because I was living pretty recklessly at the time, I don't think I would have survived. Obviously he would not have survived. So saving his life saved my life. And I've had 2 more children. And, it's not easy. Life is not easy, but we have to be committed to the right thing and to God. And God has blessed my life because of clinging to him, and it is a trust, and we develop trust over time. But anyway, so yeah, it's a similar story to your
So
mom. And
beautiful.
I want to encourage girls out there that are scared. There are pregnancy centers out there. Birth Choice is one. They're out there, and they can help you, to do the ultrasound. They can provide things that you need. And so anyway,
That's such a beautiful story. It's such a beautiful story. I thank you so much for having the courage to share it. As you said, there is, shame, and people are afraid to tell their stories, but telling our stories, it saves lives. It encourages other women and other men to know that they can walk out, that it's never too late. Whether you're have the clipboard in your hand, whether you're in the robe, whether you're on the table, you can run out. And hopefully, we can reach them before they even get there. But the way that God encountered you, it's so beautiful. And I love what you said about trusting God, because it is scary to have an unplanned pregnancy, and there are uncertainties that people have. I counseled women for so many years, and sometimes they don't know, how am I going to do this? How am I going to afford daycare? How am I going to afford housing? What's going to happen with my relationship? It's okay to have those uncertainties, but to be able to get to a place to say, God, I trust you, even in the uncertainty, even in the place of not knowing, that's a beautiful thing. And to know that there is support out there, like you mentioned, pregnancy resource centers, maternity homes, pro-life nonprofit organizations, CareNet, Heartbeat, Birthright, they're all across the country. There's thousands of them, and they're there to
Mhm.
step in and to stand in the gap and to help you. So that story just really moves my heart, and it's a beautiful testimony. And to see where you're at now as a mom, as a wife, as a leader, running for Congress, God has definitely done wonderful work in your life.
I want to add all those websites that you just mentioned. I'm going to add that to the description. If say a girl's listening to this and she's completely at a loss, what can they Google? What can they type in to find these resource centers?
Well, definitely Google, CareNet pregnancy resource centers, Birthright pregnancy resource centers, Heartbeat pregnancy resource centers. And then each of those websites will have a directory where they can go to and they can find one in their neighborhood.
Right.
Now, I will say for them to be careful, there is misinformation out there because pro abortion advocates will say things like, oh, pregnancy centers are fake clinics, they're trying to trap
Mm.
women. So just be mindful when they're searching that those things may pop up as well because they have a campaign trying to falsely accuse them. But every city, every town, at least, in a certain mile radius, should have a pregnancy resource center. There are at least 20 or so of them in Connecticut, in my home state. I know there's many of them all across California. Find the
Mhm.
nearest one to you and give them a call. Also, I want to mention another resource. If you are a person who's had an abortion before,
Mhm.
Support After Abortion is a great website that you can go to,
Mhm.
and they have a number that you can call and that you can talk to people. If you've had an abortion, you're dealing with shame or pain, just know that there's forgiveness and there's
Mhm.
mercy available to you. And so you could look that up as well. And so those are some resources. If you're scared, if you're considering abortion, or if you've already had one and you need help, help does exist.
Right. And you know what I notice when I drive around is a lot of the Planned Parenthoods are in low income areas, Hispanic communities, Black communities.
Right.
So, it's very obvious that they're targeting the minority race. And so I like
Oh,
that
yeah.
these other clinics are trying to counter that by putting, uh, you know, counseling centers and just resource centers also in those communities to counter that, the culture
Right.
of death upon our
Right. It's
babies.
important to know that they're doing this for free. Planned Parenthood is making a
Yeah,
profit. So that's a
right.
huge difference. When Planned Parenthood does an ultrasound, they're doing it to determine how far along you are to offer you a surgical or a chemical abortion pill. They're not showing you the ultrasound image and, oh, take this home and put this on your refrigerator. They're definitely
Mhm.
not doing that. And so they get paid millions of dollars from the government. They have a lot of celebrity donors, so they're bringing in buku money. And then on
Oh yeah.
top of that, you're paying. When I worked for a pregnancy center for 4 years before I worked for Live Action, a woman called me and said, do you guys do ultrasounds? I said, yeah, why? Oh, because I tried to get one at Planned Parenthood and they quoted me $600. And
Oh,
I said, we do them for free. They're quoting you
wow.
$600 to not even really give you the picture of the baby, to push an abortion on you. You come in here and we will do an ultrasound with our trained nurses, our trained sonographers, our ultrasound techs, you know, our doctor, and none of it, you'll be charged for nothing. You're not going to be charged for parenting classes, free resources, diapers, baby clothes, crib, car seat. And not only during pregnancy, but most of these pregnancy centers are going to work with you for a year to 2 years after the baby's born. You still come back every single month. You get clothes, you get diapers, you get classes and education, counseling, and prayer, and it's all free of charge. And most of these centers are not getting a dime from the government. They're raising
Exactly.
money. So that goes to show
Right.
you the difference.
I'm so glad you added that, because one side, one organization, the side of life, they're giving to the girl, to the
Right.
woman. The alternate is taking not only our tax dollars, they're taking from the actual person. They're taking away life. They're
Right.
taking your money. And this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Go figure why they guard it so
Mm-hmm.
fiercely, because you know, and the Bible does say it's not money is the root of all evil, it's the love of money is the
Right.
root of
Right.
all evil. And people are possessed by this love for money that they will, at the expense of an innocent, they will tear out limbs. They will, you
Mm-hmm.
know, with tools, surgical tools, suck out their brain, dismember. I mean, it's horrific. It's horrific, this industry.
It really
And
is. It
yeah,
really is.
so
I just,
mhm,
what you said reminded me of a live action video. We have a video with a former abortion doctor. We have quite a few videos titled,
mhm,
What's an Abortion? But one of them
mhm,
was with Dr. Levitano. And he says in this video, I'm a person that if someone came to me and said, here's, hundreds of dollars to kill my baby, I would take the money. And thankfully, he
oh,
got out of it. He adopted a child, and that child died in a tragic accident. And then he never looked at abortion the same way. He went back into the office to do more abortions, and it was like
oh,
he couldn't do it anymore. And so he came out of it. But he said that I would take their money like a hitman.
mm.
So you're absolutely right.
I want to add that link to the description also, because I've seen that, and it's so impactful. It's so impactful, and what a story. So, well, Christina, this has been wonderful. I am so grateful that we were able to connect, that you
Yes.
are able to share your story. And really quickly, what is the current legislation that is out there that people need to be aware of? Is there something that
Oh,
federal?
there's so many things. I'll just throw out a couple things. I would say um track what's happening with baby Olivia. So as I mentioned, there's states that are passing legislation to allow baby Olivia to be seen in schools, but there's other states that are fighting against that. And so I would
Mhm.
say just stay connected to that legislation. Unfortunately, there are states like my state in Connecticut and other states that are trying to pass abortion as a constitution, a part of their constitution. They're rewriting the constitution in their
Mm.
states to try to legalize abortion. So I would say pay attention to that. Um, I would say pay attention to the presidential election and just be mindful that we're going into election and we want a
Mhm.
candidate that's going to fight for life. And so making sure whoever's running that we're pushing them to to fight for life. But I think one of
Right.
the most important things that someone can do, because I know people will be listening from different states, is to know what's happening in your state. What are the pro-life laws? Maybe you're listening in a southern state and you're saying, okay, well, abortion's banned in my state, or we have a
Mhm.
heartbeat bill at 6 weeks, so it's all taken care of. No,
Right.
there's still things that you can do on the ground. People are leaving your state to go to other states and to get an abortion. So
Mhm.
if you're in a state that
Mhm.
your abortion's banned, just know that Planned Parenthood's paying them money. They're giving
Yeah.
them money. I've had a pregnancy center worker tell me that she stood outside of abortion clinics in pro-life states, and she's seen them, the abortion staff workers. They're not doing abortions, but they're running out and they're giving them money and saying, "Here's your money to go across state lines." So know that they need you, like working at those centers, volunteering, helping, or if you're in a pro-abortion state, they need you to testify. They need you to go to the Capitol. They need you to go on your social media and to advocate and to say, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to put birth control in vending machines. They're trying to put the abortion pill on college campuses. They're trying to put it through CVS and Walgreens, that people could get the abortion pill over the counter. There's just so much to talk about, but I would just say learn what's happening in your state and get involved.
Exactly. And we need to, God, he's imploring us to do this. We
Right,
cannot
right.
sit on the sidelines, people. I'm talking to the church. Do not sit on the sidelines. If you have any, you know, what's the saying? Any unctioning from the Lord, hearing
Right.
this story, this testimony, know that God is calling you to find what your lane is in all of this. And we are not to cower back, we are to press forward.
Right.
Why are we so afraid when we've got the creator of all things, the earth, the sky, the universe, the galaxies plural? He is behind us, and we are to show
Amen.
faith, which is the evidence of things we cannot see, and trust in the Lord because He's got your back, and you need to plow forward. In the Revolutionary War time, I like to tell the story that there was something called the Black Robed Regiment, which were the bishops, the pastors. They would preach the gospel in front of the congregation. They wore the black robes, and
Right,
that
right,
time.
right.
They would remove their black robes and join the militia and go fighting the redcoats, the
Wow.
British. And
Wow.
so we need to have that heart. Now, we don't want war, physical war. We are fighting a spiritual battle. We are fighting a battle, in legislation. So let's do that. We don't want to get to that point where it becomes a physical battle. So I just implore Christians, again, 2 Chronicles 7:14, God will answer a prayer, but we've got our part to do. So
Right. I love that. I'm going to go look that up. I want to learn more about that history. That's fascinating.
yes. Well, thank you, Christina. I enjoyed my time with you, and
Yes,
I hope
me
that
too.
you can come back and we can discuss, whatever we need to discuss regarding legislation or any more information out there. I would love to, keep up with you, and I will be attending the Live Action Summit here in
Oh,
Orange
good.
County, California. So that's very exciting. Can't wait to join you all for that. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm definitely, your story is so powerful. I'm going to share it on my own, social media accounts, because I really want people to hear your story all throughout the country, because it is just a story of God just doing a miracle in your life, and you're the fruit of that miracle. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, God bless you, Christina. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope one day to meet you in person.
Yes,
But,
one day it'll happen.
Yes. God bless America, but most of all, God save America. Take care.
This show is brought to you by Ceci Truman.